Welcome back to the podcast number 2. We're here at the legendary Warehouse Studio. We're having our listening party tonight. Today we have an interesting guest. Used to work at EMI, founded his own label, even worked at Jones Soda. Our guest, Brian Watson.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And then to my left, we got Sam Darkoh, obviously the co-host.
The man of the hour.
The man of the hour.
Yep.
My album plays tonight.
Our Desire.
Excited. Have a lot of random people coming. But you know what? It should be fun, I think. Yeah, I think
Sounds good.
The more random people, the better.
Just the beginning.
Exactly, yeah, it's exciting.
Essentially, we just figured we might as well do a podcast today as well. Talk a bit about music business. We have our guy here who has all the knowledge.
Yeah.
I know everything.
Yeah, he does.
I'm old enough.
Yeah. Where should we start?
Oh, let's a little background on you.
Have you guys promo the album yet?
The promo of the album? The album is out. The album is out pretty, I'd say what? It's out early December.
Early December.
10, are we allowed to, what am I allowed to say, what I'm not allowed to say?
10 tracks.
10 tracks.
A cohesive body of work.
All right, we can't oversell. We can't.
We'll do it. Yeah, we do.
I'd say 10 tracks, 10 strong tracks. Awesome, I can't wait for people to hear it. It's hip-hop, it's rap, Vancouver hip-hop, more for a scene that isn't that active right now, but just for me. And what, after?
He's here to save everybody.
I'm not here to save anyone. I'm here to save myself, if anything, to save face.
Saving the rap game.
We've heard sneak peeks of it. So
Oh yeah. Excited.
I think you look for next year's Junos, and that's what
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
Well, Blue's out right now as well.
Yes,
You can
Blue's
stream that
out. And
everywhere.
It's doing well. It's doing pretty well.
Doing
I've got people at my school that tease me about it every day. They're playing it when they walk into class, when they leave class, during tests.
During
It's
tests?
awesome.
What do you mean?
It's awesome. No, it's awesome. I have a supportive group of people around me, and they're down to actually listen to the music and all that. And if I get in the car, I give them the aux cord, they instantly play it, and I'm like,
Really?
oh guys, I don't need to hear.
That's
all
good
this
though. That's a good response.
Yeah, exactly.
Heard it on the radio yet?
We still got to submit, right?
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Coming to a radio near you anytime.
Just make sure you pull over when you hear it on the radio.
Oh no, it's over. You see, what was that?
Everything else will.
We saw a video of an
super
artist
fire
that we like. His name's Anderson Paak, and he saw his billboard. He saw his billboard in LA. Got out of his Escalade, got on the roof, and just started dancing in the middle of traffic. I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Ever see a billboard and my thing's getting played on the radio? I'm turning it all the way to 11. You ever see Spinal Tap? And this is the speakers that go to 11. I'm putting this 11 and then just playing it for everyone.
Yeah.
Excited.
Spinal Tap's my era. He might be a little.
See,
young
the
for
thing
that.
is, I feel like you and I probably have an understanding of music I don't even know if you are aware of.
Which is?
Which is like if I mention Spinal Tap, Tenacious D, or any type of funny.
Spinal Tap, I'm not aware of. Unfortunately.
You got to do your Googles,
Prerequisite, man. You got to watch it.
Exactly.
Right.
In the music business, Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap.
Oh, it's hilarious.
That's
on
why
the
we have
to-do list.
the Marshall fridge at the schools. It goes to 11. We
You
paid
never
$400 for a fridge for no other reason than
Because
the
it
knob
goes to 11.
goes to 11.
I guess that's a good way to segue into it. We forgot to
Okay.
mention in the intro, he is also the campus director of SAE Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
Yep, which is interesting. So I kind of want to backtrack and figure out how you went from your early days as a kid to ending up as campus director at
All
SAE.
right. So you want to go all the way back to when the earth was cooling.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Basically, the quick and easy version, I hope, is growing up on shag carpet with those big Sennheiser earphones with the coily cable. If you think of Eric Foreman from the 70s show, that was kind of me growing up.
In the basement of Wisconsin.
Listening to the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and I think Bob Dylan's basement tapes, and I think he had Pink Floyd, and just the cacophony of those 3 albums all at the same time. It just kind of really threw me for a loop. And in all honesty, I wanted to be, Paul McCartney with chicks chasing me around, or Danny Partridge from the Partridge Family. And unfortunately, I really couldn't play much more than 3 chords on a guitar, but I could play the drums fairly well.
When did you get into the drums?
Right, like kids,
Really?
basically had a pair of drumsticks from my cousin and ended up banging on the couch the different the different tonalities of the cushions on the couch made, kind of set it up like a drum kit. And I think my mom and dad thought I was insane, but actually doing it to rhythm and actually, tonality, making it work. And they said, kid needs a drum kit. Our couches are getting killed. So they got me a drum kit, and there was no turning back. I soon realized that unless you wrote the music, drummers were fairly exposed or disposable. So I quickly started making the phone calls and managing the band and sort of.
So your own band, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was basically job protection. If they thought my meter was shit, at least I still had contracts in my briefcase.
How did you get into the whole business side of things at first? I mean, back then you didn't have as much access.
I was just
to the
better
internet,
at it.
Right?
I mean, that's the truth. I was just better at running the show. And managing bands. I didn't sit around. I didn't have a lot of patience.
Fair enough.
I wanted to be rich and famous. I mean, let's be honest. I was in it for the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sometimes not in that order. And I was just better at it. So I was quite happy to take a back seat from the drums, and went from my own band to having basically a roster before I knew it was a roster. It had half a dozen bands, winning the Shindig contest down here.
How did that even start, gathering all those bands?
I was the only kid within about 50 square miles that had a Mac computer, like one of the original, and I had a dot matrix printer, and I made press kits with Surlock binding.
Oh my God.
And I was, I knew what press kits were because I grew up, friends of the family were in the industry already. I sort of had an idea of what you needed to do to present yourself. And I started charging $25 for a one sheet or a press kit.
Not bad.
If they wanted color, it was $50 or whatever. And before you know it, I had a roster. I was booking bands downtown, getting them their press material organized, getting them organized. And then one day the phone rang at the house in the basement, and somebody said, "Are you the manager for Memory Day?" And I went, "Sure."
Technically,
I'll take
that. It was the town pump calling for a booking. And so that was the first time I had heard myself referred to as a manager, and it was basically like crack, just crack cocaine. It was the best feeling, and I sort of found a calling. And then from there, went on to sign a local band called Bob's Your Uncle, Suki and Lee, who, went and borrowed from mom and dad and the bank the credit card.
Was this under Maximum Records already?
It was not Maximum at that time. It was called a horrible name. It was called Culture Recordings.
That's how you know you're early, because the names, when the names are like that.
The pomposity of me changing the culture,
Culture.
So, yeah.
Oh, God.
It's
you gotta have the ambition,
it sounded like some sort of biopsy or some sort of test lab. But anyways, to make a long story short, we got rid of that name pretty quick. Bob's Your Uncle, Lightning in a Jar, the first album I signed, we made, we produced, got signed to Atlantic Records in the U.S., got signed to EMI.
Wow.
And, that was just basically a year and a half, 2 years after high school. The record went on to sell extremely well. So paying back the $10,000 loan was easy peasy lemon squeezy, and I had all this extra money. So again, you think you're that and all that in a bag of chips. Let's keep going. Started the management company, and then basically ended up working, as well as running my own management company, ended up working for a label called London Smith Discs with Bruce Levins, who ran Little Mountain Sound. And we launched that label. And in the process of launching that label and being the head of the marketing for that, I got a call by Virgin Records, who had just been purchased by EMI, and they were looking for a new marketing manager. And it's one of those things you hear, do it yourself, right? And everybody was everyone was a multi-tool at the company. And the day they called me for an interview, I was replacing the T-bar ceiling. And I was covered in dust and had a dust mask on and sweatpants, and I just looked like crap. And they said, "Well, you got to interview at 4:00 today because we've been trying to find you, And we're leaving tomorrow, so I drove over there in my work clothes and interviewed. And the very next morning, well, actually that night, I got a call when they were at the airport, and they offered me the job. So the very next day, I think I was about 23. My very next day was to do a Sting concert with Sade.
Just a casual name
was
drop.
The beginning of the end, right? So had a great time there. Was in charge of marketing and publicity and sales for everybody from Lenny Kravitz, Janet Jackson, Smashing Pumpkins, UB40, Enigma.
Yeah.
Got
So
to
my
work
question
with
with
the
that stuff though is what you're the head of marketing and publishing. What does that mean? As in, what are you thinking about the sales plan? How you're representing? So thinking about like the way I'm thinking about now in like the social media era. I guess the big thing that's big now is kind of trolling. And what does it look like? What did it look like then?
Well, I mean, it's first of all, it's not like we sat there and hatched, all of the great ideas. A lot of this comes top down from management. For example, when we were working with the Smashing Pumpkins, a lot of it came from the band, Billy Corgan and his management team, and they would have sort of a base parameters of how they wanted to be presented, images included. No use of pumpkin pies, any kind of reference. I'm not making this up, right?
Oh man!
So you hear stories about the brown M&Ms in dressing rooms. It's the same thing so the marketing comes top down, and then what we do as regional marketing reps or national marketing reps is we go, okay, well, this might work in the U.S., this might work in Switzerland, this might work in Australia, but it won't work in Canada. What can we do that's Canadian-esque that appeals to our demographic and our shopping?
What's a good example for that, for like U.S. versus Canada?
Well, the most blatant example that you can get is when you hear stories about different territories releasing different singles.
Yeah.
So quite often there'll be, if it's a big enough release, like a Janet Jackson one, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's a world, and Bryan Adams too.
Yeah.
It's the world goes on the same single on the same day. And it's just massive, a massive bombardment of marketing.
Yeah.
And bands that are starting out, like the Smashing Pumpkins, you're usually given focus tracks, 3 or 4. And then, you go, okay, well, what did they do in the US? They released that particular track. What did they do in Australia? And how's their success? And you're sort of benchmarking, comparative analysis for all you marketing guys out there. And then you sort of come to a conclusion of what would work best in your market. But you're also turning around, but you're looking at what Sony's doing. You're looking at what, Warner was doing and Polygram and, all the different labels. What artists do they have? What's working right now in the charts? And where does our particular project fit? So that's where, regional, a regional impression can be put upon the marketing plan. And they trust the regions to make those decisions. So we went with a different single. Don't ask me which one we went with. I do know the one that I chose was the one that broke the record. So the first single went out, and then I chose Today because the video was so creepy, driving around in that milk truck, ice cream truck. And that single came out probably about 12 weeks later, and just that was no turning back.
Yeah.
We were one of the first adopters for the Smashing Pumpkins, and they've recognized that in the past it went straight to gold, and then straight to platinum within a few months, and now it's multi-platinum. So that's kind of how. And as far as publicity is concerned, same thing. A lot of do's and don'ts. But they're looking for any exposure that's complementary. And back then, our social media campaign consisted of go find some bloggers. There was no social media.
Was there any focus on that? Would labels even care about that?
It was analog, dude.
Yeah.
We had to, every week I had radio reports coming back from the promotions team, and we were sitting there on a Friday at 4, all dying to get to the bar, and phoning Toronto and phoning in our report. CFOX, Lenny Kravitz, heavy. CFMI, heavy. And then you fax it.
Okay, yeah.
That was it. it was like filling in your golf card. You know, the thing this long, squares, and you got to fax it off. And it was all, and you did that for publicity reports. The way they found out what publicity they had is they had a clipping service called Bodum's Clipping Service. And you would find out if, you might not even know there was a piece in Prince George or Medicine Hat or Thunder Bay. You may not even know until you get a report back the following week.
Wait, but was all of this based out of Vancouver at the time?
No, it was the head office was out of Toronto.
Did they ever have an office here?
Yeah. So I worked out of the Vancouver office.
Yeah.
And there was an office in Toronto. That was it.
Well, I'm assuming in all of that, the offices, the label offices in Vancouver ended when, I guess, Napster came around, kind of thing?
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, in all honesty, we had probably a staff of 12, you know, including the EMI. Like, I was responsible for Virgin, Chrysalis, and IRS records. Yeah. My guy across the hall was, as I said earlier, Capitol Records, EMI, Proper, and Blue Note. Yeah. I happen to have all the cooler ones. He had the Stones. That was a bit of a bummer.
That's a pretty cool one.
So it was all directed. We had 12 people and a very corporate structure, a lot of reporting, a lot of oversight. And then, man, like within a decade, the offices became smaller, and eventually people were given this whole thing about, you can work from home.
Mr. Watson, you have a phone call.
You can work from home. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
You can work from home on your... Everything just became, what's the word I'm looking for? Fractured. And slowly but surely, I hate to say it, but publicity and radio promotion can now be done by one person in Toronto. Like in my days, we used to go and visit and have an appointment with every radio station every week. We'd look at videos. Yeah. You know, I'm not working there anymore, but I'd show up with a bottle of scotch. I'd show up with a 6-pack of beer, and we'd talk about the album. That was the great thing with radio back then is you would sit down with the music director, and you would say, man, you got to check out this record by Lenny Kravitz. It's the and it's not going to drop for another 2 weeks, but I can't leave you anything, but I can let you hear it. And we'd sit there like we would normally. The only thing missing was smoking a joint. But you'd sit there with your friends, and you'd listen to each cut, and you'd go, wow, that's cool. Like, the drummer's a chick, you know, and all of this, like, how was it produced? Where did they record it? And that was really rich and rewarding. And then so when a station said, yes, I'll add the song, or a station said no, they had, you really felt heard. Even if they said, no, we can't add this track, they had done the due diligence to really listen to it. But it was also the old days of all those movies you see, of going out for dinner, getting to know the person, knowing about his kids, knowing about her kids. And
it's very disconnected.
And nowadays, I know that radio promotion is done by a department in Toronto with phone calls and email and Skype conferences. Yeah. And you don't even drop a record off anymore. I'm digressing, but you know, when we had to drop Smashing Pumpkins, I went around to each of the main radio stations that would play rock or mainstream rock, and ask to go to the washroom, and I taped the CD to the back of the toilet. Yeah. And so did that for CFMI, Z95, and everybody else, and Victoria. We took a trip and did that like 3 days. We were like scared shitless that somebody would find it in Victoria 3 days before. Yeah. And then what we did on the day of release is we would have the entire office all pick up one phone line and dial each station directly, talk to and say to the music director, Smashing Pumpkins can drop in 10 minutes. It's in the toilet. It's in the bathroom. It's in the washroom. And they all ran around, ripping the toilet seat apart, finding the album, and then running straight to the DJ booth and the studio and saying, put this in, because they all wanted to be the first one to drop the album.
You really don't get that anymore now. Like, you can't.
You do, but you know, the digital way of delivering it is they, you know, the Smashing Pumpkins single is in your inbox.
Yeah, you get a press release.
But you can't download it until 12:01.
Yeah.
Whatever, and then so you're just sitting there clicking a mouse, and it's just taking all the humanity out of radio promotion or publicity and.
Where do you see that going in the future? Like, I'm assuming everything's going to become even more hands-off and more digital and automated.
It's certainly made it more efficient for the record labels. It was a very costly procedure, but I think artists, a manager, as a former manager myself, I think, we've recognized that was a very integral part of building relationships.
Yeah.
Either with radio publicists or journalists, or promoters, record promoters, concert promoters, DJ pool guys, all that kind of stuff was all built on relationship. I like the efficiency, and if people pay respect to connecting properly, like a Skype call, face to face, that kind of thing. Take the time. The conversation can still happen.
Yeah. And
hopefully, but there's nothing like sitting on a couch like we are right now, cracking a beer and listening to an album the first time. And talking about how it was made, where was it produced, who mixed it, who mastered it. I mean, all of that stuff seems to have just been that's only for the hardcore super fan.
Yeah.
Right? So where I see it going is it's just going to become more efficient. But I do have, it could be a silly belief, but I do believe that the humanity will come back because it has to, right?
I mean, like, as easy as it is to consume music or like videos or live shows, even stream everything. People seem to love going out to shows still, and that's where the revenue still lies. So I think that's always going to remain.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why managing artists today is you get them on the road as fast as you can.
Yeah, and
you build an audience member one by one. And, the long tail of that relationship goes into not only a live show, T-shirts, merchandise, buying additional product, that connection. And that's why you find, you hear people saying, oh, my album sales are down, but I've never toured as hard as I ever had, because that's the thing that's working.
Yeah.
And managers are seeing that working, and labels are too. So they're starting to recognize that and starting to support that. I just wanted to go back a second to Radioland. And the gist is that nothing against music directors, and I might take some heat on this, but the new generation of music directors that have come in, they're all young. I'm 51. Yeah. These guys are young. They're musicologists, but they've come in. They haven't experienced a music director. Their office for a music director used to be like have a bar in it and a TV, and you'd sit down and you'd do and a stereo. The new music directors have a small office, and it's all on their computer. So they haven't been exposed to that human element of connection and talking about artists and talking about the plan, the future. And so that's the problem we have with bringing humanity into it. Nothing against them. They just haven't had that chance to experience what it's like to have that real, honest dialogue. And they're also driven by a lot of different parameters now. They're driven by what's popular, statistics. When you deliver a single, they're going to want to know the statistics of that track and where it's made leverage, where it's hit, where it's made some traction everywhere, including around the world. And you can't deny it. It's there. They can data mine that. Okay. So there's a very clinical approach to it, right? So I think it would be great in a fantasy world to put all us old farts back in front of that technology and see how we use it. So here's a word. Humanity keeps coming up in my talk these days. I met Tony. Tony Rudner is a renowned, acclaimed producer, songwriter for BMG out of Nashville. He had done things like Emerson Drive, Doc Walker, Farmer's Daughter, and a bunch of others. My label at the time was humming along, and we always got calls from people saying, come record at our studio. So this particular, Tony has a big love affair. He really enjoys jazz, so it kind of made sense for me to go talk to him about what his studio looks like because I had a bunch of jazz clients. So, you know, we went and looked, and he had this little studio down at Harborside in North Van, and it was good. It was a good little studio. We looked at cutting some records there. But then over time as well, you know, I'd go back for a visit, and Tony was like, I think I'm going to start, people keep asking me to teach Pro Tools, so I think I'm going to do that. And I, you know, gave him my unsolicited opinion of what I think about music schools. You know, back then it was the Trebas and the AIs of the world saying, this could be you winning the next Grammy or Juno, and I just puke. Right?
What time, like, what year was that?
Oh gosh,
when the idea first came out? Yeah, 10 years ago maybe. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, we probably a bit more, but I came again, you know, cutting records, coming back and forth, wasn't really thinking much about it. And then one day he called me out of the blue and asked me to substitute because his music business teacher had quit.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, man, not a problem. I like to hear myself talk. When do you need me? And the guy says, I need you Thursday. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
So what the hell? Support my friends, you know, got in there and very guarded. You know, I spent 7 years prior to that developing with Fiona Black. I was on the advisory committee for the Capilano University Business Admin program.
Yeah.
So again, it was about
That's where I'm at.
Right on. Alma mater, man.
Yeah, man, we're everywhere.
We're connected. So, you know, again, developing a program that actually did not take advantage of the students and had a really good outcome. So it was something that was very important to me. And so I did 3 months teaching 1 day a week at Tony's school. And I said, you know, there's something going on here. There's just a different vibe. It's actually run by musicians, for musicians. It wasn't developed by academics. Every instructor was working in the industry. And the curriculum was very fluid in the sense that they could, you know, almost every 3 months at the end of a term, it would be improved upon based on, you know, what's happening in the industry, feedback from the students. I am
curious about that. So who created the course outline? For example, for the music production course, that's kind of happened?
Yeah, Tony is responsible. Mike Rogerson and Tony are responsible for crafting the original curriculum.
When did like Mike Rogerson and Sam Ryan come into the whole picture?
Right in the beginning. Really? So Mike was the very first instructor.
Yeah. And
he hasn't left. And Sam, when they needed to expand, Sam was the go-to.
Yeah.
So it was him and Sam. And then over years, they expanded into post-audio, music theory, and other things like that. But the curriculum has been basically revised on an annual basis to represent what's current. You know, we used to teach Logic. We don't.
Yeah.
We taught Ableton. We introduced Ableton about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, and found out that that's going to be a bigger part of the course. So we went off and we talked to Ableton about being Canada's only certified certified Ableton training center attached to an audio engineering program.
Do you guys still remain the only school?
Yeah. I mean, there's Beat Drop out of Calgary. Great. If anybody in Calgary, check out Beat Drop. But they're strictly just Ableton. So we were the hybrid where we're actually introducing Ableton into the workflow of audio engineering and breaking down those musical prejudices. And Ableton thought it was really quite a neat hybrid. And we were lucky. We got it. So we got that stamp of approval. And then once we kind of got that going, it was kind of like, I'm like, you know, shit, Tone, you know, I want in.
Yeah.
So the record business was slowly fading away. A lot of my main clients, which would pay the bills, were having babies and getting married. So there was some downtime, and Tony and I made an agreement to sort of take the school to the next level. And then I became a partner, and then just recently we sold the company to SAE Institute.
It's huge.
Which, huge. Yeah, it was a nice deal.
A nice deal. Yeah.
So they gave you a number you couldn't refuse. They said,
I think that's what Tony said, and they put it in the paper. Yeah, they did make a deal that Tony couldn't refuse. I had a small portion of the business, but at least I think he asked me once what I thought about it. And I was like, hell yeah.
So that just kind of naturally happened. It wasn't discussed beforehand, like you wanted to approach.
No, Tony was retiring. You know, Tony had a very good career, and I was kind of outgrowing Tony. I kind of wanted my spot. I wanted my space.
Fair enough.
And so it was a good timing all around, and SAE came in and have supported the business perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, we are growing. We are going to be expanding. It will be a creative media institute. I can't get into too much, but let's just say it goes from Nimbus all the way to VFS and in between.
Wow. That's going to be huge.
It's going to be a big $6 million plus investment.
Wow.
So we're excited about that.
It's going to be some nice studio spaces, you know?
More studio spaces times 5. Yeah. So lots of things that are good for the local community. I think there's lots of good schools in Vancouver. What's unique is everyone's an apple, a banana, and a pineapple. There's no 2 apples.
Yeah.
And that's good because that gives students choice. But when they come to us, it's going to be a smorgasbord of fruit.
Yeah. Yeah.
They won't have a choice but to say.
oh,
I'm already warming up.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So the Australian group that owns us out of Byron Bay, Australia, is super supportive.
SAE is Australian?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, big, world's largest provider of audio engineering. 54 campuses in 28 countries.
Huge.
And we're the first Canadian one.
They don't have one in Canada yet. Not even in Toronto. Wow.
No. So
I think Vancouver is a good place, though.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, that's it, because, you know, it's audio engineering is our bread and butter for sure, right? But there's also the creative media aspect of it. So what does that look like? Well, most people go to post audio or audio post production, but there's much more. Yeah. So, you know, we're getting into virtual reality. We're getting into, you know, the film end of it in a bigger way. I can't really tell you too much more.
We'll have to have you on again when everything happens.
When the news actually
in the new SAE studio.
Yeah, exactly. We'll meet you there.
Yeah.
We'll get that camera.
So that sort of brings us to current day.
I'm curious though, when you look a lot of audio schools, even in the US, just around the world, the price point of entry to get into those programs are usually much higher than what Harborside would be. Yeah. But Harvard, or formerly Harborside, now SAU, you get the equivalent amount of knowledge, same time frame, if not more.
Well, you know, it's interesting you brought that up. That is one of the reasons that I started to drink the Kool-Aid over there. Because the price point, and it's 9 months, but it's an intensive 9 months. Yeah. It's not a semester-based program. It's a vertically integrated program. It's a different style of delivery. It gives you everything at the same time. All 4 pillars of the program, Pro Tools, Ableton, Post Audio, and Advanced Recording Techniques, never ever leave. You always have 1 day of that for 9 months. I don't want to get into the semantics of it too much, but it was created by Tony. Yeah. It was Tony's legacy. He doesn't want to rip people off. He does this for a living, and he knows what it's worth. Yeah. And that's what I like, the vocational side of it. We're not an art school. We're not a music school. We're a trade. Yeah. It just happens to be creative.
I did read that in the article. The idea was that it would be not a music school, but a trade school.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, we try to tell students that very quickly as they come on board, is it's a trade. Yeah. And once you wrap your head around that, you'll understand all the possibilities. You know, we have students coming to us that are, you know, want to be rock stars and want to be rich and famous, but it's our job to bash that dream out of them. No, we don't. We support the dream, but we also want to say, hey, man, working somewhere in the industry, is a lot better than asking if somebody would like Coke with their fries.
I think what this course or just in general a school like that would opens your mind up to, especially when you're fresh into it. You have not too much of an idea what kind of jobs exist in the music industry. So you're like, oh, I want to be a producer. I want to make beats, or maybe I'm the audio engineer, or I don't know, want to meet a famous person. I don't know.
You want to meet a famous person.
Well, once you're there, I
came to school to meet a famous person.
But once you're there, you figure out you can be in post, you can be anywhere really. So I think that's like one of the best parts, apart from obviously learning the technical side of Pro Tools maybe or Ableton.
But see, that's something that I'm proud to say that came to the table with me, is because my management background. It's like, yeah, you can go through school and be an audio engineer, but when you're developing an artist, you can't just say, hey, let's put out a song and see what happens. You've got to diversify and look at other ways to bring artists or bring fans to the table, to other ways to monetize it. So, our incubator, it's becoming, that's one thing that I've always felt schools do not do, and that is they don't invest into each individual and incubate them. So let's introduce you to live sound. Let's introduce you to post audio or radio broadcasting or whatever. And again, you're not selling out. You're exploiting your skill sets while you work towards your big, hairy, audacious goal of being a rock star or whatever. And once they get their heads wrapped around that, then it actually works. There's a synchronicity in there.
Yeah, I see that.
Like in my field, first I'm coming from also acting and all that as well. And there's this idea now, especially in my final year, is the idea of having a plan B. If I go out there and go for 30, 40, 50 auditions and nothing lands, then what do I do, right? And I believe like SAE, in the audio sense, you have the plan B is a lot more secure. It's like, okay, if I'm not going to become the next, like in a hip hop sense, the next Metro Boomin or the next big producer that everyone's asking for, then you're going to be able to keep bread on the table and keep food on the table and be able to pay bills by doing other things. And then even from then, you're going to have new connections that you'll connect to. And I think that's why music seems a bit more secure right now in 2018.
I don't know, man. I don't
know.
know.
If I release an album, right? If I release an album and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is going to land, although I love the songs and I have people telling me the songs are great and all that, you have no confirmation until it comes out and it does what it does. You have no confirmation. But if it doesn't, I know that I could possibly say, hey, you need me to sing a hook on something? You need me to come do background vocals? I can come and even write for this person. There are way more opportunities. But in acting, if you're not there in the room, if you don't get the role, that's about it.
Right.
So, I don't know. It sounds better. But this whole SAE, learning to every single facet of the business, it sounds a lot more beneficial than just putting all your eggs in one basket and just being like, I'm just going to be this.
Yeah, but at the same time, not losing sight of that main goal, right?
Yeah. And I think what we learned fast is that in post, especially in Vancouver, there's a lot of money in regards to the film industry.
Was there?
But
is that why you got to teach me this stuff? Is this why?
I still decided to not focus on that, which I maybe sometimes regret. But.
Oh man. Is there no way to pick up that stuff again?
Yeah, you can learn it, I'm sure.
I mean, for you, like how you said, like what he doesn't. What do you say? You're saying like you didn't pay too much attention to the post stuff.
It's just like the way you would set up, like just the mixes, the templates, the Foley, etc.
So you don't like money? you don't.
No,
you don't
I just figured I'd probably never want to do that personally.
Yeah, I mean, a course like ours is not for everybody, but it exposes, like, now Marvin knows that he doesn't like that.
Yeah.
But, he has an understanding. If he wanted to pick it up, he could do so quite quickly. But yeah, no, it's the diversity of the course is its strength, but it's also its number one enemy. Because, you get a creative type like Marvin who wants to produce and work in the studio and work with living, breathing people. And he doesn't want to sit there and in a screen for 17 hours trying to make the perfect cannon explosion or whatever, right?
But I mean, that was the great part though. Like I did express that to you, especially during that time frame at SAE, and then you were pretty understanding where I wanted to focus more on the internship at the recording studio, and that way I kind of still learned. I didn't just not go to that class and then didn't do anything.
So you're able to work something out.
And our program, I know we're not here to talk about my school all the time, but our program is designed to springboard people into other areas of interest. So they, Marvin took an interest in studio and management side of things. Others have gone left turn and said, I'm not going to worry about singer-songwriter crap. I'm going into post-audio, and I'm going to just sit in a room all day and make gun sounds for the next Age of Empires or whatever.
It is kind of fun.
Halo or something.
Oh, there's a big business in that. Like in one of my classes, we went to go study like Walla and ASMR and all that stuff. Right? And I was sitting there like, oh, this is what Marvin's been doing this whole time. Like this type of thing. It's learning about sound effects and capturing that stuff for film and TV shows. And you go in there and you start to see how big it is. You never guess how big it is, especially from an outside eye. You would never figure like it's that much energy and money and that's a big thing. The money, the finances put behind everything. I was super surprised. So you go in there, you see these huge rooms and all these like materials, and it's the biggest thing. And I talking with these guys that have been working there for like maybe 20 or so years. And like in North Van has North Shore Studios out there. Yeah. And they have a few places around there just for sound.
Sharp, yeah.
Yeah, Sharp is where I got to visit. And I'm sitting there with these guys and talking with them, and they're talking about, I was like, do you guys ever like, were you ever interested in music? And it's funny you guys say like, oh yeah, they got more. They said, yeah, for sure. They all started making music and in music, the business, and they're just like, but at some point they were like, nah, I need some type of security. And
that's okay. There's nothing, I mean, when I managed artists like Rich Hope or Krista Couture or Memory Day or Metalwood, I can name drop until the cows come home. In the early stages of developing their career, my number one question is, what are you doing to put bread on the table? Because the last thing I want is a desperate artist who's trying to make some cash and making the wrong decisions out of desperation.
I think you hear that a lot, where artists, instead of like doing what's right, they take the bag of money right before. They kind of like put the money over the right choices.
Having another plan B or plan C in effect gives you they think it reduces freedom, but it actually allows you to have more freedom creatively about the development of your career.
No, because if you're just worried about money or like how am I going to pay rent, etc., you're just going to be stressed out.
You're just making music to sound like everything else.
But everything must again, everything that I did, and learning this from my mentors like Steve Macklem, Sam Feldman, and I mean, those two guys were pretty integral in my life. Richard Branson later on, but they always had an end in mind. Begin with the end in sight, right? Or begin with the end in mind.
So big picture kind of.
At the time, is it having that allows you to make decisions about your career development. That you can say yes or you can say no.
Yeah.
And having that, it's not selling out. It's giving you actually more freedom to be more selfish about what is best for your career.
Yeah.
And the idea is eventually when you make those right decisions, that plan C or B is just going to be wound down and will no longer be a necessity. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if there's a means to an end, it really, putting those products on the shelf at Costco, midnight shift or whatever you're doing, has a purpose. And if it's only going to last a year and a half, so you save enough money to make that record or to tour to Europe or whatever, then do it. But if you can imagine not doing that, managers are often looked at as the bank or the credit card.
Yeah.
And they just can't do that anymore, right? So, anyways, I digress.
We just came from our like kind of what we call it, the kind of investment period of us. I remember him and I were recording music and working on stuff, and we're both sitting there having to go work these jobs that we absolutely hate because this is the only way we can put money like forward and be like before we got anything, right?
They've locked my wife out.
Oh no!
Let my wife in. Let my manager in. Mummager.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway,
we need one of those.
That's what I mean. We just had a period in our lives where we were just working. We weren't working at the same place, but we were working at like these jobs that we absolutely hated. It was just because we needed the money and we weren't going to get to a point where we were releasing songs Like we could have easily had a conversation, sat down and be like, all right, so what's really popping right now? Trap beats and throwing this stuff. Let's just do something like that. And
even along the way, we had plenty of songs that we could have just put out for the sake of being heard. But
thank God we didn't.
We scratched like, I don't know how many. But
yeah, exactly.
You got to do something about the green room, man. My M&Ms haven't been separated.
Oh, unbelievable.
Oh,
his rider. You didn't see his rider before he came?
I saw your rider.
You got.
My rider is just female guests. That's all I ever ask for.
Oh, hashtag me too.
Okay. Okay, it's funny enough because when we start looking into numbers, right? We start looking like you start seeing your audience. Surprisingly enough, I seem to have more female fans than male fans.
60-40 kind of.
60-40. And you know what? I can't complain about that. You know what? You can only be as blessed as you can imagine, right? You know, and I'm happy with what I got here. You know,
You're a handsome man.
Thank you. Oh, don't flatter me, man.
Handsome man.
Go straight to my ego.
Handsome man also.
Oh!
Look at that.
Higher Desire by Sam Darkoh.
Higher Desire.
Blue Roses.
Yes.
Where did you get that from?
This?
Yeah, what?
Oh, this was just tucked behind. Oh, I was just keeping this for safety.
Oh, okay.
Actually, no, I carry this around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We didn't know. I didn't know we had posters available.
$25.
25. Yeah.
Sign it.
What do we want? We wanted to ask you about like
Talk about this.
Well, we've been working on this for what 2-3 years now. Coming up to 3.
Big facts.
Coming up to 3 has been a long process, and we finally got the album cover done. We've got the mixes done. The mixes and masters done, sent to us. We're about to have a bunch of people that I know. Hopefully, there's no drama when they come in. A bunch of, hey man.
Who did the mixing on this?
Your guy, Mike Rogerson.
Mike who?
Mike Rogerson.
Okay.
Echo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a bunch of people coming in to listen to this tonight, and I'm excited. But we were going to ask you about what are some things we should be looking out for in terms of trying to, because this is I don't know, about the business now is a little different, I would imagine, but what are some tried and true principles of marketing and all that stuff that we need to look into to make sure that this project gets the exposure that I feel it deserves after 3 years of investment, all right? Yeah. Well, I think we feel it deserves, right? What should we be looking
straight.
into? Yeah.
You know, I've seen this man sweat bullets over this, blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. Being in the studio, his thumbs are bleeding from working the fader so hard.
Weird.
You know, I'm like, Marvin, you gotta eat. He's like, no, and he's taking like
no way.
Vitamin packs.
Vitamin, yeah.
You know, like those elite cyclists. You know, plasma gel.
I'm dedicated to my craft.
Recycling your blood intravenous.
I haven't left the studio in 3 years.
Yeah, I'm surprised you found your way here.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that used to host the apprentices of the United States president now.
Wait, what?
There you go.
He didn't know?
Future prime minister over here.
Future prime. That's what I'm going to become. I'm working on it. I'm taking notes.
Sam Darkoh.
But what should we be looking forward to? What
to start with the end in mind is, the record industry, the music industry.
Okay.
You know, for years they've been saying, the music industry's in the shitter. But in all honesty, it's the record industry that's taken a tumble and had to reinvent itself. The music industry overall is extremely healthy.
It seems to be making a major comeback. Like Sony and Warner combined are turning out ridiculous numbers. And
Sam, I was talking to Sam about this off the air.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. Let him know. Let him know we have a relationship.
So to make a long story short is the music industry, there's more music being consumed than ever, right?
Yes.
Whether you agree with the delivery method and you know, the quality of it, whatever. There's a niche now. It's niche marketing nirvana. There's a niche for every style of music. There's an audience for every style of music. It's a lot. It's way more cost effective to deliver that music.
Yeah.
But at some point to cross over from a niche artist to a mass marketed artist. And mass marketing, I'm not talking about Walmart or anything like that. I'm just talking about, you know, turning it into a solid business. Yeah. You will need a marketing partner.
Okay.
And a marketing partner is a record label. Yeah. They know how to do it. They know how to do it the best.
That's interesting.
But I just want to finish by saying, for everyone that's hearing this right now going, oh, bullshit, because they steal your music and they squash your creativity. That's changing.
Well, you can also negotiate different splits and
the deals are becoming a little bit more artist favored, and there's more creativity that comes with the deal. And mind you, if you're an all-girl band and you've just been sort of hatched out of this antiseptic lab that people like Simon Cowell come up with, all the power to you. That's a commodity, right? That's entertainment. That's called show business. But if you're in the music business, artists or labels are recognizing that they got to adapt or die. And nothing breeds innovation like disruption. And they've had enough of that. So you're finding deals at the right time for the right artist with the right label who are thinking long-term and thinking about marketing and really introducing the artist over a period of time. Yeah. It's still a hit singles business, but that's what works for them. So let them use the tools that work. Yeah. But you can control the message as a manager. You can control the message, and as an artist, you can have some control, if not all of it, over your creativity right from the word go. So it's no longer a bad word to say I'm looking for a record deal. Yeah. Record labels have learned their lesson. So starting with that in mind, you got to go back to the old tried and true way. And it is literally in all of this social media. Remember, I was talking about radio promotion. It's about connecting with the artist, connecting with the fan. And there's no better way to do that than live touring. So the one thing that's benefited this disruption of social media, direct-to-fan marketing, the one thing that's come full circle is people still want to go and be entertained. They still want to go and see their favorite artists. They want that, emotional experience. And that emotional experience is what you are looking at as your new currency. It's emotional currency. And once they're engaged, you can convert them in a number of ways. So instead of 1 or 2 or 5 funnels that would be traditionally available to you, you're looking at a multitude of funnels now. Some people call that the long tail. So it's about monetizing a larger swath for maybe lower price points. But the uptick of that is you are, again, servicing everybody who wants to engage with you in their own way. Yeah. And it could be T-shirts, it could be marketing, records, it could be shows, it could be podcasts, it could be outtakes, it could be photos. All the rarities and B-sides are interesting. It could be you once a month releasing a bonus track just to people who sign up to your fan club.
What do you well, with that being said, what do you think about, so you said there's all these revenue streams for artists now. What do you think about record labels just implementing the 360 deal where they pretty much take a part of all of that?
I think the 360 deal had it. It was an invention of that time.
Yeah, response to being
right. Yeah, where we get they were losing their revenue stream, and their revenue stream was distribution. They had the pipeline, but suddenly when that pipeline became fractured and music was leaking all over the place. They wanted to try to monetize their relationship with artists and management and product, and it was approached more like a business. They were going to create this entity, and then they were going to fund it or finance it like a startup, and they were going to share in that. I think there's been very few successful 360 deals. I can't reference them right now, but I think labels realize that they're not a management team. They're not an agency. They're not all of these other things that come along with running a business. And I think they realize that they just stick what they're good at.
It's essentially being a big marketing machine.
Absolutely.
A bank, essentially.
They're investing. They're going to take your 10,000 fans and turn it into 100,000 fans and capitalize on it, and they should be paid for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And contracts and deals, just like we hire independent radio promoters, hire independent publicists, you're going to work with a label for a period of time. You could license a record for 10 years or whatever, and they're going to get a piece of the net proceeds of the profit. Yeah. So that's, again, just to go back, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for this beautiful album right here? You're going to go to radio. Okay. You've already gone out to social media. You're going to let that, freemium music go out there and gain one listener at a time. Disabuse yourself of 99 cents. Forget that game. Yeah. Get into You know, it's better to have 10,000 people who paid nothing for this track, but then have 1,000 of them come out to your show.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit of guts to have that leap of faith, but it works. I wish I had that trick when I was really releasing records on an aggressive level. It'd be great. I'd be able to, you know, my day, it would take me $25,000 at an indie level just to get a record out the door, not even knowing if anybody liked it.
Yeah.
Right? There was I released a Guess Who record, and we did a big deal with Walmart, and Randy Lennox from Universal made a joke. He said the cost of gas went up in Canada because of all the records that were coming back. Right? Thanks for your support, boss.
Thank you, man.
But he's right. I mean, and that was the idiocy. That was the lunacy of releasing records in the old days. You would release a record, and then on Tuesday, you'd release it, and then the next week, you'd be running for the reports and the stats to find out if anybody liked it.
That's the nice thing now. Everything's instant, kind of.
Well, all of this social media stuff and all of the things you're doing to connect with your fans directly is all test marketing.
Yeah.
And you market with data, and it's now easily accessible. In the old days, you had to pay fortunes to get this type of stuff.
Yeah.
So back to this thing is, nothing's changed, but everything has. But you still need to go and tour and connect with the fans.
Okay.
You still need to go start off with college radio. College radio won't pay you a lot of money, but it's easy to do. It's a great taste maker. That's the language that we use on the record label side. It's a great test marketer. Yeah. And I know it sounds crazy, and you may say, who gives a shit if my song is being played in Williams Lake? Well,
I definitely
if 150 people are listening to it in Williams Lake, I know this sounds crazy, but if you can hop in a car and you can go up and you can do, get on a bill with 4 or 5 other rap artists, if half of them come out, you've just connected with, 50 people that have paid $10 that may buy an album, that may want to follow you more. It's a slow build, guys. You got to put the work into it.
It's kind of where this listening party comes in as well. It's just kind of building that connection with the 30 people or so. But
what's the great thing is this stuff doesn't work in a vacuum anymore. In the old days, radio was controlled by the label. Yeah. College radio, commercial radio, CBC in Canada.
Yeah.
And anything that happened with the results of that were controlled by the label. They would disseminate that information out through press releases and very boring, faceless press releases and just statements. Hey, look, we're number one. But now, if you do get a #1 record in Williams Lake, and I'm not joking, you can get on social media and say, yeah, big props to Williams Lake for, playing our track. Everybody phone in a request or whatever. You can instantly call your army up, like the KISS Army. You can call those guys up, and they'll go bananas, and they'll start spreading the word. If you get a good review, it doesn't matter if it's in Australia. Carmen Townsend was an artist one of my last artists we worked with out of EMI. We had a real hard time getting radio. And then we went blogs, like in the blogosphere, and we were getting blogs from, Georgia, down in the States. We were getting blogs from Perth, Australia. And there were fantastic and well-written pieces about the album that we, instead of relying on the record label, were instantly able to regurgitate and send to college radio and commercial radio. And then suddenly there starts to be some legitimacy. And then on top of that, we got the tour opening for Heart. Yeah. And then it just boom, right? But it took the ability for us, for you as an artist, to be able to control that information and disseminate it quickly and get it out through social media. So that's what's changed. But you still need college radio. You still need commercial radio. You don't need video as much as you used to unless you're a certain style of artist. And again, just so I'm not contradicting myself, when you scale, your career scales to that level, and you got a label partner, video will then become
like essential as well.
Essential tool.
Okay.
But earlier on, you could blow your bank on that video, and it's not worth it. It's better to do viral videos. Yeah. So in a way, nothing's changed, but the fact that you're now allowed to participate in the actual progress and the use of this data. But you still need radio. You still need touring. Yeah. You still need to do that long drive between Saskatoon and Winnipeg.
Yeah.
right?
One day.
I think like one thing I think about when we're thinking about like radio and such things is that if I do get on the air with college radio or anything like that, I'm not competing with a million American acts because of that that Canadian law about, was it the 60%? Yeah, what's the percentage? Do you know the percentage?
Over 50%.
Over 50%
of the album
had to be Canadian.
Yeah,
had to be Canadian
production,
art.
lyrics.
What is that? Maple or something?
Yeah, it's maple.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like that. I think that aids us in a certain way.
Yeah,
that helps us out because we don't have to compete with some rapper out in New York.
Well, it's the same with all the grants that are offered here as well. Which helps a bit as well. Well,
the funding, that's one thing that I certainly took advantage of starting out was Canada Council for the Arts, Factor, Video Fact, Promo Fact. They've all unfortunately changed and morphed into smaller entities with narrower scope, but they're worth visiting. And the CanCon thing for sure can help. And you don't really have to do much about that because the radio stations have to adhere to a certain broadcast policy.
Okay.
So your number one job is to just let them know that you are an up-and-coming and emerging Canadian artist and that you have a great record. And just keep slogging away. What I would suggest now that I didn't do in the early days is, make sure you do build that long tail with regards to your social media. So I'm interested in knowing your outtakes. I'm interested in knowing how many songs were actually, recorded bed tracks for this album and how many didn't make it and why didn't they make it. So maybe you can release those rarities. I'm interested in knowing your lyrics. I'm old school. I like sitting down on shag carpet and
going through the booklet and
reading all that shit.
That's a lost art. Yeah,
and that stuff just has transferred. Instead of being in the jewel case or in the jacket, it's now on the website. So you can make that available to your fan base. And you'd be surprised that Krista Couture did a fan run after we parted ways with the label. She went on her own to do some Indiegogo campaign when crowdfunding was really popular or was in its infancy. And she did extremely, extremely well. And everything that really made traction for her were those signed lyrics, were those anecdotal comments about what the song was about. She's a doodler and an artist, so she also did these one-offs, little doodles about each song. That stuff can put money into the gas tank to get you guys on the road, for lack of a better analogy. So do the traditional stuff, but you're just doing it a little bit differently. And especially in your genre, you're gonna need to connect with those fans, because it's not like there's a rap station just sitting there waiting.
Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, especially here in Vancouver. And I think it's exciting and also kind of terrifying to be putting a rap album out now, especially without like a huge, because majority of hip hop traction in Canada is coming from Toronto. It's coming from the exact opposite coast. So if we're dropping something here, it's like you hope it doesn't. If anything, you kind of hope it blows over there, and you hope people like kind of catch it and think, oh, they're doing something over here and all this stuff. But like, it's weird putting it out here because you don't know who's gonna catch it. I honestly can't gauge who even listens to rap.
We
and
go
somewhere.
Here, like our audience isn't even mostly from Vancouver that's played it. We put it out now. It's a global release essentially. Nobody really cares.
Well, again, I'm dating myself, but one of the best examples of micro-marketing that I ever saw was with Terry McBride at Network when he took on the Bare Naked Ladies. They were all but done, and he basically said to them, you got to get out of these goofy shorts, and you got to start being. You're fantastic songwriters. You got to start taking yourself seriously. And what he did was he was noticing where they were still filling houses, and that was Boston and Buffalo and New York and that Eastern Seaboard area. And he did nothing but just hammer them there, keep going back to tour, keep releasing the music, advance the music. So for you, your job might be to have a very serious discussion with Sam and say, Vancouver is going to be a coast. We're just going to let it go. And if things happen, that's great. But you actually are going to spend most of your time micro-marketing him in Toronto.
Yeah, for sure.
And hammering that scene. And you may fly out there, instead of hitting the road and playing Kamloops and Penticton and Victoria and Duncan, you know, all those places, right? That might be suitable for a singer-songwriter or a punk rock band.
Not for
rapper.
Save your money and buy tickets, red eyes, that get you into Toronto. And then go and introduce yourself to the Toronto cats, the Toronto scene, the agents, the promoters, and go back every quarter and go back with a gig or a showcase. And that's a solid plan.
That is a plan.
Yeah.
Right?
That does sound good. Yeah, it does sound good.
You know, and
the problem is if I get super busy with the million things that I'm working on, the million of projects that I'm working on.
well, that's where he smacks you.
Yeah, exactly. He says, this is the main focus right now.
That's why you need him to pay to be in his band.
Yeah.
If I could start,
You need a membership fee, man. If you start paying into this membership fee, you'll take it seriously.
This is a 50-50 thing, all right? These beats are nice and these lyrics are nice. We meet in the middle, all right? We need each other. All right, let's have that understanding. Oh, wow. Let's have that understanding today. Oh, man.
No, man, you're going to drive the van. Don't.
I technically already am right now. I got to carry all the gear in my car. I had to bring my food, yeah. No,
so from what I've heard, you know, talked with Marvin, is the plan is in place.
Yeah.
I think some refinement is always healthy. Reality check's always healthy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with, 10 years ago, I might have had a different opinion about what to release a record, how to release a record. But, you know, I think all of that disruption has kind of settled down, and it's a good time to release music, right?
Yeah, I don't know. You can have like all the marketing plans in the world, but I think now you have to adjust it anytime. Like you get new information so fast, and it's so easy to just adjust whatever you're doing. Like before you had to I don't know, I'm assuming with a label you had to go and prove it by a million people, and then everything already is in motion. By the time something goes wrong, you can't, or you just waste a ton of money.
Sam's job is to go out and make sure that all his fans say how great the record is. Your job is to go out and get the tastemakers in the industry to validate that record, because that's what other tastemakers look at. So if you want to, for example, if you wanted to hit up Jonathan Simkin, or you wanted to hit up somebody at at Universal or over at Warner's, you know, they're going to listen to the music first and foremost. But if you're able to show them a story, God, that sounds cliche, but if you're able to show them a story and some traction, it validates. They're looking at it from a business perspective. So that's your job.
Yeah.
So you both got work to do.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to wrap this up. No, we're getting close to our listening party, so we'll have to get ready for that.
That's very true. Very true. Yes.
Higher Desire coming
Desire.
soon. Bangers, smackers, all the shits, the
emotional moments.
All the stories everywhere.
All the stories.
You know, you're paying me to hold this up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You can put it down. We've got a budget, but I don't know how big it is.
Those blue roses looked expensive.
Oh, yes.
They were pricey
Everything
roses.
is expensive.
Apparently, they're from the Netherlands.
He told you that?
You flew those in?
Apparently.
Holy smokes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yeah.
Well, Wallet heard about it.
We need to take a look at your budget. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no
Thanks
worries.
for coming
Thank
on.
you so much for coming.
No worries, man. The album sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See? Sounds great.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, awesome.
We'll see you every 2 weeks. The podcast. We'll see you
Every 2 weeks?
every 2 weeks.
More
We'll see you
content.
next time. All right.
We might not have as illustrious a guest as this man here.
I'm not moving. I'll be right here.
They'll be waiting for us. Yeah.
We'll have more stuff to cover, and we'll have more exciting stuff. Hopefully, if Brian Adams blesses us again, right?
Yeah.
With
if the studio space blesses us again.
space.
The studio gods.